figure, we will have to accept that too. And if that should come to pass...
Ladies and gentlemen, Lord Stephen Christ here with Richard Cohen from NASA, who has been gracious enough to call me back here to answer a few of my questions about the atmosphere, more specifically mega cryometeors. Are you familiar with mega cryometeors, Richard?
No, I can't say that I am.
Oh.
What is it? Can you repeat it?
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but there has been being reported, not just in the recent modern era, but I mean, there's reports of it happening over the past few centuries, of large blocks of ice that mysteriously fall down from a clear blue sky, and scientists don't know where they're coming from.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I can't say that I've heard of it. When it comes to the atmospheric pressure, are we talking like hail or larger than that? What are we talking?
yeah, we're talking much larger than normal hail. I mean, there's reports of it. You can look it up. Sometimes people have reported 1,500-pound blocks of ice falling down from the sky. Recently in Croatia in 2012, a 1,000-pound block of ice fell from the sky. It has a flat surface to it. The specific one in Croatia has a flat surface to it. And there's other, even just recently, Oakland, California, Florida. I mean, they're happening in Illinois. They're happening every so often, every once in a while. And, there's a lot of speculation, well, could it be some form of aircraft discharge? And that has been ruled out by the experts. There's somebody called Jesus Martinez Frias. I don't know if you're familiar with that person. I guess he works.
The name sounds familiar, yeah.
Yeah, he supposedly works for NASA, whether directly or on a contract basis. But I have an entirely different understanding of the Earth and the cosmos in which we speak of. I don't know if you've ever been familiar with the concave Earth theory. You ever heard of that before?
No, I cannot say I have.
Concave Earth theory was actually introduced to the public over 100 years ago by a man named Cyrus Teed, where he went out and he actually conducted very creditable scientific experiments that showed, geodetic experiments, showing the curvature of the Earth actually curves concave instead of convex. So in a sense, we're actually living on the inside surface of a hollow shell known as Earth, and the entire universe actually fits inside the Earth. So therefore the sun, the moon, the planets, and even the stars would actually be contained within the Earth. And this is a new addition to this theory, which I proposed about 9 years ago, is that there is actually a literal, tangible, palpable glass ceiling to the sky at 100 kilometers.
Okay. This man, you said his name's Cyrus Teed?
Yes, Cyrus, Teed. And
okay. And what was the basis of, what are some of the details in his theory?
Well, I pretty much gave it to you in a nutshell. The Earth, he proposed that there's no rotation to the Earth, and that has been actually corroborated throughout since many different. There's been the Michelson-Morley experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with that experiment in the 1880s, where they tried to show. At that time, they believed in a luminiferous ether that was permeating, and in order for their experiment to make any sense, they had to actually either one, conclude that there was no rotation to the Earth, which obviously they didn't want to conclude that. So instead they ultimately got rid of the ether equation from it. But there actually still is an ether in the Earth. There's other experiments too. There's a man named Sagnac that did an experiment on a table, and he showed that there's actually an ether permeating within the stationary Earth, and therefore the sun is actually small. It's inside the Earth. The sun is the object. The orb is actually orbiting inside the Earth. It's rotating around the inside of the Earth. Then there's a central celestial sphere, but this is a literal celestial sphere, not just a celestial sphere that in a Copernican model we think is just a sphere in which we can place the stars on. But this actually has a literal celestial sphere inside the Earth, where all the stars are small They're created by a process called sonoluminescence, multi-bubble sonoluminescence, where there's actually a celestial ocean above us. And at that time, see, this actually points to a literal flood account. I don't know whether you have any faith in God or not, but this...
Well, not so much faith, but there is a decent amount of evidence that did show that there probably was some form of flooding, within the past few thousand years. So yeah.
Yeah, well, according to the Bible, it happened about 4,400 years ago. But yeah, there's to me, there's insurmountable amount of evidence to show that there actually was a flood. And during this time, this is where I believe the glass sky formed. If you read Genesis 9:13, it says that the bow in the sky, or the rainbow, was revealed to Noah after the flood, and it was actually taken as a token, a promise to Noah that the earth would not be flooded again. And within this concave earth system, where it's all pressurized, and we're being pushed to the ground, instead of being pulled by a gravitational force, we're actually being pushed by the ether. So when this glass sky formed, it actually compressed the atmosphere. It pushed the ocean waters down so they couldn't rise over the continents any longer. And so this glass sky, this rainbow, is actually a token showing literal proof that there's a glass sky and that it pushed the water down. There's so many different pieces of evidence that I've actually collected that show there's actually a literal, tangible glass sky, even how meteorites have a fusion crust covering to them. Fusion crust is burnt glass, and so when meteors enter the atmosphere, they're actually skidding through this glass sky. They're melting and they're penetrating through, and they're getting encapsulated by the burnt glass. Are you familiar with tektites?
Yes, that's what that. But I wanted to ask too is I was wondering how you were going to explain meteorites. Then okay.
Yeah,
right.
Well, tektites is the same. See, I'm sure you well know there's a quandary in determining the origin of tektites as well. Some people think they come from the terrestrial origin, or some people think it comes from an extraterrestrial origin. And there's holes in both theories, because obviously there's no...
Yes, I've heard a couple of the theories, yes.
Yeah, there's no meteor craters in the strewn fields where the tektites are found, and it doesn't have any cosmic ray exposure, so it can't come from space. And so, but if you understand there's actually a literal glass sky at 100 kilometers, which we call the Kármán line, a meteor could have just simply skidded through, melted through, and then it pulled along with it these molten globules of glass, which actually, obviously this glass sky, I'm telling you, is not moving, or very slowly moving. Therefore, it's going to fall in an entirely different location due to the velocity of the meteor versus the velocity of the tektites. And that's...
I don't mean to interrupt you. Just out of curiosity, how would you explain then, just with the shuttle program at all?
Yeah.
I don't know if you don't think that we landed on the moon or not, or that we've even been able to, but it just makes me a little curious.
Yeah.
100,
well,
you said 100 kilometers?
Yes, 100 kilometers. I do believe that...
How would we...
Well, I do believe there's a lot of prevarication going on within the upper levels of NASA. I do believe that the shuttle is designed to actually skid through, melt through, because it has a flush bottom. It has a carbon-carbon matrix, so it's able to withstand very high temperatures.
Okay. Yes, that is okay.
And so I believe actually, if you go back in time to 1962, with Operation Fishbowl, I find that name very telling. Where
oh, now I'm seeing the irony. Okay.
Yeah. Where they
supposedly
launched these high atmosphere so-called nuclear weapons. I think they actually blew a hole in this glass sky, and that's where the auroras. They had this auroral display. It happened over Hawaii and Johnston Island and the Bikini Islands, and so this auroral display is another piece of evidence that there actually is a literal glass sky, which these auroras are formulating. It's the same with Crook, a man named Crook in the 1800s. He was a man who invented cathode ray tubes, and he showed that there's actually a dark space that's surrounding the glass, and that's creating the striations of the auroras. And so the glass actually is a catalyst to create the auroras as well. There's so many different proofs that I show. Birefringence. I don't know if you're familiar with birefringence in calcite or glass, where you can actually you can project two different images because there's two different indexes of refraction. One is the ordinary ray and one's the extraordinary ray, and so it creates this double image. And so in the Libyan desert, are you familiar with the Libyan desert glass that they found in Egypt a long time ago?
No, I can't say that I am.
Well, that's another mystery. It's like tektites, but this glass is not molten per se. It's actually more like fragments. It has a yellowish color to it. And they found these pieces all over in the Libyan desert, and that too has a mysterious origin to it as well. But when they analyzed it, they showed that it has a very weak birefringence. And so when we see rainbows in the sky, like quadruple rainbows, there's like an offset rainbow, that's giving an evidence of that. We're looking through the sunlight is being projected, dispersed through a semi-birefringent glass material. It's being projected. It's giving us this offset rainbow in the sky. The same thing that sometimes we see a double sun in the sky. It's the same thing. It's the birefringence that's allowing this to happen. Or even a comet's tail. I don't think comet's tails are. I don't accept the traditional explanation. I believe that they're being viewed through this birefringent glass sky that's causing the splitting. So there's a lot of different proofs. I can give you a link to one of my videos where I show all this. Lightning or ball lightning. Ball lightning is created because there's glass present.
When I first thought, I was under the assumption that you were calling about the atmosphere guy. Once again, when it comes to astronomy, I don't know a few different things, but when it does come, how would you explain just the basics of how lightning is even created then? The glass sky then.
Exactly. I think that the glass, I mean, if you ever hear of Eric Dollard, he holds some seminars. He talks about when there's a glass present, this dielectric force that's moving laterally, it builds up in the glass, and then it causes a blast. And so we have upper atmospheric lightning, sprites, right? And we have lower atmospheric lightning as well. But he's saying that they're not created top down or bottom up. They're actually created laterally and instantaneously like that. It's due to the fact that there's a glass sky. But yeah, atmosphere. Initially, I wanted to talk to somebody about the atmosphere because the biggest concern I have is the megacriometeors, the large chunks of ice that are falling down from the sky, where scientists don't know where they're coming from. Some people speculate, some scientists speculate that it's possible that in the troposphere and the stratosphere region, where they kind of the tropopause. They're speculating that somehow wind shear is supposedly bobbing these huge chunks of ice up to 1,500 pounds, like a volleyball, and then finally descending down to the ground. To me, that makes no sense whatsoever. There's no.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I know a little bit about. But yeah, it's still a theory when it comes to that. But yes, okay, I see where you're going with it. Okay.
And so, with this glass sky concave Earth model, with the sun moving and the Earth being stationary. You can understand how redshift of stars, which has been totally misunderstood because chromatic aberration.
That's what I wanted to ask too. Was about how would you explain the redshift then?
Yes.
What's your opinion on it?
When you're viewing through glass, actually there's two levels of glass now. You have the 100-kilometer level, and then you have the celestial sphere level, and you're viewing these stars, which are up above the celestial sphere in a celestial ocean, which is caused by sonoluminescence, multi-bubble sonoluminescence. Sonoluminescence is creating stars in a laboratory beaker in water when you're reverberating sound. And so there's a lot of harmonics, there's a lot of vibration going up in the middle of the Earth. I say up in the middle of the Earth. And so when you're looking through the stars and you see this redshift or the blue shift, actually it's just the chromatic aberration of the filter of the glass. And so all the stellar spectroscopy is just thrown out the window, no pun intended. But
okay, yeah,
but what
I see that you've definitely done your research, but I would still argue against. But
well, I understand initially. I just would like challenge you to actually look at this evidence that I present to you very objectively, without any bias or predilections, whatever, and just take it for what it's worth. Because the way I see it happening in the end, and this fits a biblical model too. I mean, this is science and Scripture as well, where the sun will eventually stop in the sky. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but 3,500 years ago approximately, the sun stopped in the sky, which was corroborated by different ledges all over the world. Every different continent has a story about the sun stopping in the sky. And if you read in the Bible, in Joshua chapter 10, it's also recorded that Joshua commanded the sun to stop, and during that time in the Bible it says that large hailstones from heaven fell upon the Amorites. And so I make the connection with the sun stopping and the ice falling, And if you understand Scripture, Isaiah 34 says the sky will unravel like a scroll. If you have this, if you understand, there's this glass foundation to the sky, and there's a whole sheet of ice that's covering this glass. This ice actually fluctuates daily from a translucent to a transparent ice, an amorphous ice to a crystalline
ice. What you're saying is the glass isn't the same as the I had gotten a little confused. So the ice isn't the same as the glass then?
Correct. There's a glass sky, and I give at least 22 different pieces of evidence to show that there's a glass sky. And then there's a condensation, a frozen condensation that formulated on the glass, kind of like how you in the wintertime use on your car, you have ice on your windshield, and so it's the same concept there. And so nobody to this day, nobody can give a definitive and a creditable answer to where these megacriometeors are coming from, unless you understand the concept of a concave Earth with a glass sky. You have a place to put this ice and understand where it's coming from. It's not happening. I mean, it's happened. It's records show that it's happening way before the invention of aviation. It can't be from airplane discharge. It can't be from space. Some people think, oh, it's star water or something like that. No, I mean, scientists completely rule that out. It makes no sense because obviously a meteor would be coming in really hot. You're not going to have this cold piece of ice coming down to the Earth from space.
Right.
And so everything is ruled out in that regard. And because the way I see it prophetically happening, where the sun's going to stop and it's going to unravel this, that's why we have, I don't know if you're familiar with deep underground military bases and tunnels, but there's structures underneath the ground. Okay. And so I believe prior to this happening, see, this is my calling, or I have to warn people, I have to tell people, this is the reality of the world, the universe in which we live in.
Are we talking about the New World Order?
Well, yeah, that's I seek first the kingdom, so I call the New World Kingdom Order. We're actually this decimation will happen very soon, and the people who want to be saved will be brought underground, and so this gets very scary. So I'm trying.
No, I think it's just now that we've gone to that. I don't think that it's completely out of sound basis, but it at some points can seem very paranoid, but
how familiar, Richard, are you?
I think you have many good theories. I do, but I'd have to look into it because some of the things you're flooding me with a little bit too much knowledge, information at least.
Well, I appreciate you
just
just
to look it up.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and I really would want you to look it up because. How familiar are we? I mean, there's a lot of talk about a lot of the higher echelon people within NASA are actually Freemasons. Are you familiar with that?
No, I didn't know that, but just I'm not trying to offend, but just judging by the way you've been speaking before, I can see why you might think that. But.
Yeah, well, I definitely don't believe there was a moon landing. I mean, back then they might have put something up there now, but I mean. As far as like back then, there's too many.
You don't think that we landed in 1969?
No, I think there was a Hollywood stage set up, probably with the help of Stanley Kubrick, Walt Disney. I think if you look at it,
we're going to go to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Well, yeah, we're going to look at things very seriously, and we're not going to scoff at this. We're not going to be written off as conspiracy theorists.
I'll give you that.
I mean, there's a lot of problems with the so-called moon landings, especially stereoscopic parallax. I mean, you can't justify this being a real lunarscape. Same thing with the Mars rover, the so-called Mars rover landing. I don't believe that was. I believe they went out into the desert somewhere in the Southwest and just filmed it, and they changed the hue saturation. I mean, you can just go on YouTube. You can find this. I think there's a lot of hoaxes that are being conducted with NASA. I believe that a lot of the spacewalks are just conducted in either underground pools. You see bubbles sometimes they're floating up to the surface, or sometimes they'll go in a zero-G airplane. There's a lot of questions, and a lot of people are getting very suspicious of NASA, and I think it's for very good reason.
Well, don't write this part down, but what I will tell you is that when it comes to NASA, we are very good at, or not very good, we're trying desperately, just with the cutbacks that have happened, is to try to get more interest in it again. So I'm not saying that they lie, but they do try to get media. Once again, don't write that down. But
Richard, man, come on, man.
I'm not,
come to our side.
I agree with all of that, but I do think that in some point forms in order to get people interested in astronomy again and with the things that are happening in our universe. I think that we have our own way of needing to get interest again through media. Otherwise, people lose it completely. And
well, that's not really going to be matter. It's not going to be.
People care about it too much anymore.
I think a lot of people care about it, but it's not going to be relevant if the whole sky falls. I mean, if you're just purporting all these lies and continuing with this lie that the Earth is spinning, that the universe is vast and endless, which I can tell you right now, it's not. You're all inside the Earth. Why? Why do you? Where is your conscience? I mean, okay, I understand that you're ignorant, initially ignorant to the information that I'm presenting to you, but I want to ask you. After a couple days, after you seriously and objectively investigate my claims, where is your conscience behind this? How can you continue knowing that they're lying to the public? Work for them? How could you? That's what I have to ask you.
I'm not saying that they're lying necessarily. I'm just saying
they're lying
when it comes to trying to get people interested.
They're lying, Richard. I'm giving you the truth, buddy.
Either way, but what then? Just evidence-wise, what do you think then when it comes to the photographic evidence? Now you're saying that we don't. I mean, we've taken pictures of some.
Oh yeah. That's you've heard of wide-angle lenses. Photography, barrel distortion, how wide-angle lenses create barrel distortion. Like if you tilt a camera up, if you're up and say you're at 100,000 feet altitude and you have this wide-angle, this fisheye lens camera, and you're pointing it down so that it's angled down, the horizon is going to bow. It's going to bow convexly. However, if you tilt that camera up, the horizon is going to turn the other way. It's going to look concave. And so I'm saying, yes, NASA definitely fakes a lot of their space imagery with wide-angle lenses. Not only with wide-angle lenses, but with CG. With CG, they composite imagery. I mean, it's all just one big Hollywood. I mean, you ever listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Californication? They say, one of the verses in their song, it says, space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I
disagree, but okay.
Well, yeah. Well, I really should look into this more seriously. I mean, I understand that you're getting paid. Obviously, this is a source of income.
Yeah. Well, it's a job. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a job. Maybe you have a family to support or whatever, but truth is truth, and I'm asking you to find your integrity with all this. After I present to you all this information, to look at this objectively, and how can you, with a conscience, continue on working for somebody that knowingly lies to the public like this? It's an opprobrium.
That has any interest in science whatsoever should always look at everything objectively.
Yes, objectively, empirically.
I'm completely sincere when I say that I will look into this.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I can't say that I agree with it at least at this moment.
Well, I understand your amygdala in your brain, it has this denial mechanism. I mean, there's a lot of incentive for you not to believe it, but that's how truth works. Truth is stranger than fiction, Richard. And so I just compel you. I challenge you.
With one other question, though, I wanted to ask then. So you do not think that well, obviously, you don't think that the universe is expanding.
No.
You say that it's what was the concave.
Concave. It's all within the Earth. So the stars, the redshift is only chromatic aberration. It does not testify of expansion.
How do you explain then the pictures of the nebulas and the stars that we have that are so many light years away?
They're not light years away. Everything is close. Everything is a matter of relative and scale. I mean, we're talking. You're measuring everything by this fictitious astronomical unit, which is 93 million miles, and it's not true. There is no light years across. Everything is tiny. Like I said before, stars are tiny. The planets. Earth, besides Earth, because Earth is not a planet, are all tiny, and they're inside. They're above the glass. It's inner space. It's not outer space. And so the pictures of the nebula, and you see.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it at first. So you're saying that the universe is inside the Earth.
Exactly. The entire universe is the entire known universe. That when we look up into the sky, we're actually looking toward the center of the Earth, not out, away from the Earth, or not.
Okay. What about gravity? I'm sorry, I was supposed to be leaving work, but now I'm actually getting interested.
Yes.
Talking. So,
gravity.
How do you explain gravity
Well, gravity is to me, it's highly overrated and is actually a fictitious force. I believe that ether is pushing us. If you understand anything about Nikola Tesla, he talked about how gravity is bunk. It's the ether. It's compressing. Everything is being pushed. We're being pushed to the ground. We're not being pulled to the ground. And so within this pressurized system, Richard, you take the moon now. The moon, you have orbiting, and the sun are inside this pressurized system, and they're actually relieving the pressure beneath them. That's what's causing the ocean tides. It's a relief in pressure.
Okay. I have a lot of respect for Tesla, so I'll give you that. But
yes, Tesla was a genius.
I'd have to look that up too. I wish I was near my computer so I could seem a little bit more intelligible while I'm talking with you.
No, you're fine. I mean, it's this. You just. I understand. I mean, you have this. Everybody has this preconceived understanding of the universe, which is, to me, not just to me, it's wrong. And so when you're presented with new wine or new evidence, obviously you're not going to. It's going to take some time for you to absorb it, but. This is the truth. This is there's like I told you before, Cyrus Teed, along with a geodetist named U.G. Morrow back in 1897, they conducted an experiment along the beach in Naples, Florida. They called it the rectilineator experiment. And this, you can find the test results online, and you can see where they had this series of T-squares, and they piggybacked them together, and they created this virtual airline, perfectly straight. They invited skeptics, Copernican skeptics, that signed off on every incremental measurement they made. And when they traversed this piggybacked T-square apparatus down the coastline, measuring the height along the way, they found that the height was decreasing as they traversed. And so basically they were proving that the curvature of the Earth is not curving down, but it's actually curving up. And there's also another experiment called the Tamarack Plumb Bob Mineshaft experiment in Michigan, as well as in France. They did another similar experiment in France, where they hung two different plumb bobs at 1,450 feet apart down mine shafts, and they were expecting these bobs at the bottom to converge, to get closer together, because they thought the center of gravity would be, it would cause them to converge, but they didn't converge. They diverged. They went the other way. And so that's alluding to that the concavity of the Earth in the center of so-called gravity is not down, but 4,000 miles up. So there's a lot of indications that in light is not parallel. Light is actually, the sunlight is curving. There's a few geodetists named out in Germany. Wilhelm Martin is one of them, where they had, through a theodolite, they can show the light actually is curving up away from the Earth. So the curvature of our sight, our trajectory of sight, is curved more so than the actual curvature of the Earth. That's why when we look up, we cannot see the other side of the Earth, because our sight is all being curved. So it's a trick of nature. And I think it's also accentuated by the fact that after the flood, this glass sky formed, and it caused more of a refraction of what we see.
Well, I was going to ask too, when it comes to sight, then, so you're saying, how would we not then notice, just horizon-wise, how would we not notice that it curves up? You might have already explained it, but
yeah, well, that's what I was trying to tell you, is that it's curving more so than the curvature of the Earth. So even if you look at a boat out in the sea, and you'll see it gives the appearance that it's sinking into the horizon. But if you understand, and this has been proven, this has been shown, that light actually is curving up. And actually, when you look through that boat again with a telescope, it appears in full view. So it's just an optical illusion. Same thing with like superior mirages. They'll give you a conventional explanation that there's actually a layer of warmer air above this layer of colder air. To me, that makes no sense.
That's what I was going to say. You're speaking about mirages now, right?
Yeah, superior fatamorganas or mirages, yeah. But if you understand, there's a glass sky that's actually creating this, I call it a horizontal crease. Like I'm a 3D graphic artist, and I could replicate the refractions of the glass within this concave Earth that I'm talking about, and actually it will create this crease. So when you see this crease in the sky, when the sunset, sometimes it looks like it's splitting, half of it's going down and the other half's going up. It's created by this refractive crease due to the fact that there's a glass sky.
Okay, and so you don't think that a lot of it has been, I believe you were speaking about the rainbows, but when you were saying that, so you don't believe that it's water vapor of any kind. You believe that
water vapor is is actually creating the projection screen, the reflective projection screen to the rainbow. But the whole idea of the rainbow being dispersed by the white light, because the sunlight is penetrating through the glass sky, it's being dispersed and being projected onto the reflective surfaces of the water droplets. Same thing with a garden hose. If you hold a flashlight to a wall, some flashlights you can actually shine a rainbow on a white wall in a dark room. Now, it's not the water droplets. There's no water droplets in the air in a room. It's because the rim, the actual rim of the flashlight is bowing the dispersed light. So the sun, when we see the rainbow in the sky, the reason why it's curved in the first place is because it's showing the rim of the sun. The sun is circular, so it's showing the bow. It's more appropriately called a sun bow. I know you know what moon bows are, but so this is not really a rainbow; it's a sun bow. And so the water is just being the reflective surface, the surface of projection. That's all it is.
Once again, it's a very interesting theory. I will start looking it up. That's for sure. I'm sure you probably know by now. I wasn't expecting this type of interview, but
right, I understand. I have a YouTube.
No, it's still very interesting.
I have a YouTube channel. I have a webpage.
I always stay objective when it comes to anything. That's why I work here. I always think that it's the best part of science is saying I don't know until you.
Yes. Well, you sound like you sound like you have you're a man of integrity, and I want to just believe that you have conviction to actually just look at this evidence as objectively as possible, and realize because this if what I'm saying is true, which I do believe it 100% is, I mean, then we're talking about doomsday. We're talking about the end of the world as we know it. I mean, so there's a lot at stake here. So this is something that I really compel you to take seriously and look at it with all gravity. No pun intended.
I'm going to say, fair enough. And is there any name to this theory?
You could concave Earth theory. I have a website that presents a lot of information on it. It's called the Concave Earth theory. There's a man who tried to debunk it, a physicist emeritus, Donald Simonek, but he just speculated on the rectilineator experiment, what possibly could have went wrong, and he speculated, well, maybe the posts were sagging a little bit. The problem with that is that if the posts were sagging, they sagged just enough to show the exact opposite of a convex Earth. And also, you have to question, this is an 1897 experiment that has never been publicly reconducted. And so, from a psychological point of view, why has it not been conducted if the results proved to be so controversial? Did they sweep it under the rug?
I see what you mean. Why isn't anyone...
Same thing with the Tamarack Plumb Bob mine shafts.
Beyond that, I understand.
Yeah, so there's a lot of suppression going on, Richard, and I'm here to reveal it. I'm here to expose it, and I actually would like your help. I really would. I really would like somebody creditable who works for NASA to look at this information with empiricism and come to the same conclusion.
Well, I don't know if I can promise any of that, but this is my work number, so like I said, don't write some of the things I said down, but other than that, I will look into the theory because it is interesting. So.
Okay. I appreciate that, Richard. I'll
no problem.
If you give me an email, I'll give you a link to the video, our conversation.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for calling.
All right. Good night, Mr. Christopher.
Good night.